what it was like to work at the world's largest bank, what happened to me, and will likely happen to you or somebody that you know, irrespective of the industry that you worked in. Now, let's start at the beginning, where I initially got the first call from a recruiter at JP Morgan. I had a job. It was a remote job that I enjoyed, but I also heard that there was potentially some rumblings of layoffs coming soon. So I have a mortgage, I have a dog. Without this income coming in, it would have been detrimental to me and my dog, where we would have been left on the street. I wouldn't have been able to afford the mortgage or anything along those lines. Wouldn't been able to get the dog the care he needs. And unfortunately, I needed a job because my income from other places was not quite humming along as much as I'd like it to be at that point in time. So I take the phone call, I go through a few interviews. The interview process was essentially very surgical, very pointed at everything that they wanted from me. They were essentially very pleased that I had Green Candle, very pleased that I was willing to be a forward thinker, work very hard. And that was evident by me having Green Candle and working at different positions while building a side business on its own. But it stops there. Initially, I received the phone call while I was in El Salvador, and I recently had just gotten laid off. I went to El Salvador, was there for about a week, speaking at the Adopting Bitcoin conference, which was posted all over my LinkedIn. So my employer or future employer of JP Morgan should have been well aware of that. So they called me, offered me the position, asked when I could start. I said in a couple of weeks, because then we had Thanksgiving and everything like that after that, obviously US holiday. I accepted the position and started working hybrid at JP Morgan Chase in the commercial banking department. To start, I was able to get that income in and become a little bit more stable, but they were still not pleased with everything that I was doing and revolving around Green Candle and revolving around me speaking at various conferences, even though they knew I was doing this prior. Now, with all that, I kept, building the Green Candle channels. They were essentially trying to get us all to, I guess, hang out, get to know each other. Just the normal corporate jargon, get in. But the one unique thing about JP Morgan was that it really seemed to me that everybody was trying to get to know you or get to know something about you if it only benefited them. Now, this is a big issue, I believe, in corporate America. But, within the first days, I was telling my boss that I was taking Spanish lessons to try to learn Spanish and some other things that I was doing just outside, some of the interest. And I saw him taking notes, and I thought that was very odd. I've worked at 5 different companies, and I've never seen anybody taking notes on what I do with my free time. But hey, I guess to each their own. So that was one unique kind of red flag that I had at the beginning of everything getting started, which seemed very weird. Then, about a week later, I got quizzed on how many kids other people in the office had, trying to basically figure out how much I've been prying into everybody else and understanding what they do with their free time. To be honest, I didn't have any because I was trying to learn the job of what they were doing to, better improve my ability to do everything else. And my employer, my manager at that time was like, no, don't worry about that. Just get to know everybody first, which, seems easy enough, right? Get to know people. And then you can do your position and, kind of see how you can help them with some of their pain points. Now, as time went on, there became a growing tension between not only my manager and his manager, but we were all, essentially just crammed into one giant room with a bunch of cubicles. Now, there was a lot of moving parts. There was working with different departments. We had a branch in the Philippines where one guy was not working very well. He got put on a performance improvement plan, which I had no knowledge of until much later down the line, where it was nearly my time to leave JP Morgan before I got kicked in the chest and told to get the hell out of there. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so essentially, it seemed like everybody in the office worked in a place of fear. We had one guy who was the head of the entire commercial banking department. Now, I'm not going to name any names, but it seemed like whenever this person specifically said jump, everybody said how high. And that stress trickled down from every single person because no matter where this request was coming from, how ridiculous this request was, if it was not completed in a timely manner, it was, a big meeting or something big to kind of talk about, right? Although the JP Morgan put a huge stress on the workers, the workers' happiness. Part of what was extremely stressed when I first initially started on JP Morgan was this LinkedIn survey. People that worked for JP Morgan Chase voted that it was the most inclusive place to work. So obviously this video is on YouTube. So some of these policies, I do agree with inclusion, diversity, and everything along those lines. But I also think that the best person of the job should get the job. So this was initial stress point for me, and I think it's all essentially smoke and mirrors, and you'll see why in a minute. Because this was initially stressed. Hey, JP Morgan got voted the best place to work. It's super inclusive, all these different aspects, but nobody ever spent any time trying to get to know me while I was there my entire time. All I got when I was there was reprimanded. I never got, any appreciation for any of the good things I completed, and I think that a big issue with there was just because of from the top down all of the stress, right? All of the stress that trickled down from the top, and if one mistake was happened even early on in the position, it got magnified 10x, 20x, 30x. Now, the reason I think that this DE&I survey was very important and a very important aspect to stress here about my time working at JP Morgan is that because the employees were mass sent off here. They were mass sent off an email to the entire company. Hey, fill this out, fill this out, fill this out. Vote for us to do, a great survey. Or try to make it look like we're a great place to work. Oh, but do it honestly. But if they found out that you didn't do it, you voted us a bad place to work, anything along those lines. Although these surveys were anonymous, everybody internally knew the writing style of some other person, so they had a general feeling of where the pain points were coming from, where people that were complaining were coming from. So they gave it this ruse of anonymity, but everybody was always trying to find out who said what, who did what. So even on internal surveys, it seemed like it was just smoke and mirrors. It was just, hey, we're making an effort here. But in reality, it didn't really matter. They just wanted to look good and have a perspective on the outside that JP Morgan Chase was a great place to work. Now, with that being said, the job goes on, it continues to roll on. I was working hybrid, so 3 days a week in the office and 2 days remotely, right? So, the time at a lot of these corporate offices, the higher you get up, the more it's just meetings, 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 right? So everybody wants to stress that, hey, we really want to see your success, right? We really want to see you improve over time. But because everybody believes that their job is the most important, or everybody believes, what is going on at that specific time is the most important. It seemed like meetings with me, no matter what they were always getting pushed to the wayside. So the communication was not very great when it came to JP Morgan. Now, a lot of people, I didn't have the phone numbers of anybody in my job until, nearly the very end. But, that's neither here nor there, right? I mean, they did. It is very obvious from the beginning that at a place like JP Morgan, it is not about how good of a job you do. It's simply about the hands you shake. Now, this is a big deal in a lot of places in corporate America. So it's not just JP Morgan that has this problem, But that was stressed time and time and time and time again to me in order to simply move up. Was like, hey, shake this person's hand. It's good to network with this person. But everything, essentially fell on deaf ears, right? Unless you were extremely assertive, you would go to, their hangouts. You would try to grab a drink with these people after work, at the bar, or anything else. That was, kind of the way that, things were handled. But unfortunately, because that is the way that things were handled, managers did not always have the people's back when it came to the lower level positions, right? So every job I had previously, the manager seemed to put on this front of, hey, it's a big bad corporate monster. We've got your back. We're going to go to bat for you. JP Morgan was the first place that I'd ever worked where it felt flipped. It felt like people would withhold work or withhold solutions for you to do your job so they could look better, or they could point a finger at you. And that was very much so from the trickle down, right? It was the first job I'd ever had where people had told me outwardly, hey, get on to this person because they might be withholding information, withholding things that you need to do your job in order to make themselves look better and in order to make themselves look more valuable. Now, that's why I think like this corporate monster is very toxic, and why this position, or why working at a giant corporation like this, only you can only be successful with how much you suck up to the people above you. Now, let's get back to the managerial point, where I believe that the manager that I had did not really look out for me and for every job that I did, right? Until it was nearly the end, until he was like, hey, I'm trying to go to bat for you. I felt like the entire time I could not really go to him because I heard rumblings that, hey, if I made a mistake and I shot off an email, I wouldn't get a talking to and know that people were talking behind my back above me until weeks later or months later after this occurred. And how are you supposed to solve problems, or how are you supposed to mend fences if you don't know, or you're unaware that these issues are persisting throughout your time there at JP Morgan or wherever you work at, right? So you always have to be very careful of these managers, because a manager is only good as its team. And at the end of the day, if a manager is trying to just continue to work his way up, or has only worked in banking, or has only worked in this specific industry and has not jumped from a different company, they do not know what it's like to work at different places, what different environments are like. And so this is why they probably stress a specific area, specific skill, or something along those lines. Now, what happened with me was I started continuing to, go through Green Candle, continuing to buy Bitcoin, continuing to try to grow my side business, which JP Morgan was well aware that I had from the beginning. Now, there was one incident in particular that really stands out, which seems like I got the axe when this happened. Now, this incident was when I got the great opportunity to speak at a Bitcoin conference, at the Adopting Bitcoin conference. They announced it via LinkedIn. Of course, they announced it via Twitter, Instagram, all these other places. But LinkedIn was the only place where I had some coworkers on. Now, granted, very few. It was, a company that has over 100,000 employees. But I got a big talking to at that point. Why are you doing this? Do you have the approval for this? You're representing JP Morgan. And I said, whoa, 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 hold on. This entire time, I have been fully transparent that I've been working on Green Candle, that I was speaking at the Adopting Bitcoin conference the year prior, before I got hired. Why is this a big issue? Now, this was because of the perception. Oh, you work at JP Morgan Chase now. You're going to be wearing that when you go up on stage. And I said, no, no, no. I'm not going to be representing JP Morgan. I'm going to be representing Green Candle. This is, the company that I've been building. and had to go through a bunch of things. But I got a big talking to, essentially giving me the feeling, hey, you have to stop doing this stuff. But I didn't. So, the best place to buy Bitcoin in the United States and Canada is the Bitcoin Well. You could go to the bitcoinwell.com/green candle and sign up today, and they will give you wishing well tokens. They are one of the only exchanges in the United States that will give you free sats every time you buy Bitcoin. You have a chance to win 1 million sats every time you buy. You get wishing well tokens. You flip the coin down the wishing well, and you have the chance to win 1 million sats. You heard me here, folks. 1 million sats. And on top of that, they have the absolute best over-the-counter service where you can make purchases over $50,000, and they will walk you through the whole thing. They have the best rates in the United States and in Canada. And on top of that, they have the best white glove service where they will take you through those giant purchases just so you feel comfortable. You'll get it in cold storage, and it's strictly non-custodial. They are saying, we want you to experience the true power of Bitcoin, and that's self-custody. So go to the well, sign up, bitcoinwell.com/green candle today. Enough for me, back to the show. I kept, at the green candle position. I went to go speak at conferences, which I had spoken at previously as well. Even during my time at JP Morgan, I spoke at the Canadian Bitcoin conference, heard nothing, just simply because they didn't announce it on LinkedIn. So they were keeping tabs, but not close enough for them to really be upset on what everything was going on, right? I'm not on stage saying, hey, I'm Brandon, I'm working for JP Morgan Chase, and this is what Chase believes. I'm saying, hey, I'm Brandon of Green Candle. This is my talk. I'm working with, a few different companies or a few different things along those lines. So essentially, they just were not really happy with the way that I was conducting things. So funny enough, I've been building Green Candle. Luckily, I had been getting it to the point where, now I'm starting to see a lot of traction. I started to see the YouTube start to take off and everything. So, even though I told them from the beginning, I had about 800 subscribers maybe when they first initially hired me when I was at the Adopting Bitcoin conference. At this point, I had nearly had 8,000. So seeing close to a 10x in growth in a year. So I was, somewhat considering, hey, maybe this is a time for me to make the jump. And, with all of the issues, the difficulties that I was seeing, the kind of the toxicity that I was seeing at JP Morgan, it just didn't seem like a place that I could see myself working forever. Now, we even had full-on group meetings, which would take place once a month. They would, try to sugarcoat the issues. There was a lot of complaints going on throughout the entire time that I was at JP Morgan. We had monthly meetings where they would give us lunch and, give us $20-$30 lunch or give us pizza. I was lactose intolerant, so I could never eat that pizza, but nobody seemed to care about the pizza parties that I couldn't eat. But, it was all to kind of sugarcoat the issues underlying what was going on at JP Morgan. So we had this big blow up on a lot of issues that we had internally. Some people were not happy. One person left the firm, and it caused an uproar, saying that we essentially kicked him out. I didn't work with this person super closely, so I'm not quite sure the full extent of that. All I know is I saw the reaction, and it seemed like a lot of people were very upset about this person leaving the firm because this was a manager that seemed to be vying for his employees at this specific branch. But that wasn't a branch that I was at. It was a branch that, a satellite branch that we all worked with. Now, in this specific one, they were asking us some of our goals, some of the things that we see in 5 or 10 years. They really wanted to get to know us, was the premise behind this meeting, right? So I have an athletic background. My undergrad degree and my master's degree are in engineering. I got a thesis in biomechanics, sports biomechanics. So we all and I ran Division I track. So I have a big sports and athletics background. So I was kind of describing, oh, this is what I've done. This is how my skill set fit into where I'm at JP Morgan now. And immediately the head manager asked, well, oh, do you ever see yourself getting back into sports? Essentially hinting at that I wasn't going to be at the firm for very much longer in front of the entire team. So this is a point in time where I knew that it was seemingly close to the end. I also had I forgot this story at the beginning. So within the first month or so at JP Morgan, we go to a dinner where the head of the entire department comes into the the head of the department comes into where I was living, Tampa, as many of you know, comes into Tampa. We all go to dinner and, we eat dinner, have a couple of drinks and whatnot. And I get asked, oh, you got a girlfriend? Or do you have a wife? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a boyfriend? They just keep going down the list. And I'm like, wow, you're really hitting all the bases, just kind of trying to pry for this information, indirectly asking me my sexuality and everything like that, which I personally did not feel super comfortable with initially. But I guess, to each their own. So, with this information and what they were asking us to provide, or the information they were asking us to provide in front of the entire office, especially when I didn't even know these people. It's like, all right, you sleeping with dudes or girls, or what are you doing here? All of this information was seemingly very odd and something I never been asked for in a corporate environment until a little bit down the line. Maybe I'm there for a couple months and they ask me, oh, like, have you been, going on any dates? Here's a good date spot or something like that if I'm new to the city. Nothing along those lines had ever been spoken to me in a corporate setting until I got to JP Morgan. But back to the giant meeting with the lunch, right? So they were trying to ask us about our upbringing, our family, whether or not our parents got divorced or not. A lot of craziness.
Okay, so you've discovered Bitcoin and are on the path to financial self-sovereignty. But simply holding Bitcoin is not enough. You need to make sure that it's scored properly and you are in 100% control over all your assets. So sharing your keys with third parties and taking on that counterparty risk is not the answer. The answer is pure and simple. It's uncompromising self-custody, and there's no better way to do it than the Bitcoin way. They've got over 25 years of cybersecurity experience, and their team of experts can help you properly self-custody your Bitcoin, secure your digital life, configure your privacy phones, and even establish a Plan B residency if you're looking to do so. So I'm going to help you guys out here and give you a free consultation if you take the first step and visit thebitcoinway.com/green candle, and you can check out the boys at the Bitcoin Way and see how they can help you become self-sovereign.
A lot of craziness that didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, where it was, essentially getting, prying out and it's essentially getting pried out of us. And it's, in my opinion, it was too much. But, with all that being said, I had a feeling that my time was, coming close to an end, right? One other aspect of JP Morgan is that they try to get you to join some sort of club, some sort of group or something like that affiliated with JP Morgan and to get you more ingrained in the corporate culture. Doesn't sound like a bad thing, but when I was learning the job, I had no idea about any of this. This was another first for me. Now, at JP Morgan, they required I joined one. Now, there was 3 options, I believe, for ours. It was like more of a fitness option, more of like a leadership potential or innovation. And then the last option was DE&I group. Now, as I've kind of stated a little bit earlier, DE&I isn't exactly my cup of tea, but because it was a very low populated group and I wasn't, my manager essentially told me, hey, I'd like you to join this group. I said, okay. I listened, did what I was told. A week later, he asked, oh, did you end up joining a group? And I said, yes, the D&I one. And he gave me a look of surprise. And I'm like, brother, this is what you told me to do. So I was just doing what you'd asked. So, as time goes on in this DNI and with everything that had kind of transpired prior, we had a remote meeting where, my setup is at my previous home was I had one big screen here on the left and then my laptop on the right. So I was sitting here looking at my other screen while I was in this meeting, which I do with every other meeting previously. But this one in particular raised a red flag for some reason. They believed that I was on my phone during this DE&I meeting. And so because I was on my phone with this DE&I meeting and I guess the accumulation of other things, they said, this is the last straw. We're putting you on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, which is essentially a death sentence, right? Which is essentially a death sentence. So, with all that, I, was on this performance improvement plan. There was essentially no way up. They took away a lot of my responsibilities and tasks to do at JP Morgan Chase. And because they took away my task to do at the end of this performance improvement plan, they told me they did not see any improvements. Well, no wonder, no Sherlock, right? They took away all of my responsibilities and everything that I needed to do on a daily basis. So on the last day, I was called into the office and I was told it was for a year-end review. The PIP, the performance improvement plan, had ended prior. So I go into this year-end review. Everybody tries to have some sort of small talk with me, but in the end, I knew exactly what was coming, right? This year-end review, even though they framed it as a year-end review, it was essentially just a meeting for me to come and get fired, a meeting for me to come and get laid off. I got no, when I got put on this performance improvement plan, my manager's manager essentially told me, hey, you could work really hard. You can do all these things. I can maybe try to help you get a position internally. It's not going to be looking good for you. Essentially, where you're at right now with everything, I don't see you coming back from this. They gave me a fair warning. I did appreciate that. But at the end, they didn't even give me an opportunity to prove myself on anything like that because they took away my responsibilities. So the decision is already essentially made. They kept paying me. They kept me along for those essentially 30 days. And, here I am. But on the flip side of things, to wrap all this up, one benefit I have from getting fired is that I did kind of see it coming, right? I did have some goals. I did have this green candle working on the side, right? So I was able to essentially not be in the position where, hey, I've got a mortgage. My dog and myself are going to be without health care. My dog and myself are going to be living on the street because of everything I had going on with Green Candle.
My favorite thing about Bitcoin is meeting Bitcoiners in person. That's why I'm so excited to tell you guys about what is going on June 14th down in beautiful Tampa Bay, Florida. That's the Sound Money Soiree paired with Bitcoin Day. They're bringing a full day of great talks with amazing speakers like your boy here. And we're topping it off with a black tie event just for you and bring in that hot lady friend. We had Bitcoin cross 100K. We're all getting girlfriends, folks. So come on down to beautiful Tampa, Florida. And if you use the link below, you will get 10% off your entire order. Whether you want to go to just the black tie event or black tie event plus Bitcoin Day, you'll get 10% off using the links below. Also, if you're thinking about going to BitBlock Boom in April, if you're going to Vegas in May, or if you're thinking about going to Prague in June, use my promo code Green Candle for all of those. You'll get 10% off your entire order. And come bug me. I hope to see you guys very soon at one of these great in-person events. Enough from me, back to the show.
So, on the flip side of things, although they did not like the way that I was conducting myself, although they did not like the way that everything transpired throughout this time, I was able to land on my feet because of Green Candle. And that is a very important message of the entrepreneurial's journey that I want everybody to take away from this, because I believe that, through this, that I was able to come out stronger. Through this, I was able to be more resilient. Through this, I was able to be prepared for the unexpected. And I think, with the way that corporate America is structured, no matter how long you're in a company, you're just a number on the screen. You're just a ID number that, you're just a card that you swipe to get into the building. Now, because I'd seen this happen to people that were at firms for 15, 20, 30, 40 years, all of a sudden get unexpectedly laid off. And, at the end of the day, they're just like, oh, it's a business decision. Well, people have lives as well, right? So I think, although corporate America tries to get you to go all in, so to speak, on these jobs, I think that runs a very dangerous game. You essentially have a single point of failure with all that. And that is why I think that, growing these side hustles, businesses, everything like that, really truly figuring out what you want to do and becoming free is extremely important. That's the lesson I want to have everybody take away from here. So, um, you know, this job was this job allowed me to pay my mortgage. It allowed me to get another house so I could have cash flow coming in. And I will do another video here pretty soon on how I was able to go from making nothing to becoming a millionaire and being able to get a cash flowing business and able to survive on my own. I'll make a video on that here very shortly. But I think a job and a stability of income is important for helping build up a lot of those things in order to become successful in the future, because you're never going to get rich at a company unless you somehow find a way to make it to the top, and you've got to screw some people over in order to do that, unless you're creating your own business and really creating value.